Hello and welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces. I'm Stacy and we are in the Pickup Kitchen. I recently made a ton of homemade, home-canned chicken broth or chicken stock, and I used whole chickens to do that. And so today I'm going to use that chicken meat that I had saved. Like, I pulled it off the bones of the chicken and I put it in the freezer, and I had said I was going to use it to make some chicken pot pie homemade, and so that is what we're doing today. So homemade chicken pot pie. Now behind me I have my Instant Pot cooking up some homemade beef bone broth. I need to get some of that on my pantry shelf for the winter. And I also have my Presto electric pressure canner canning up one of the batches that I already made of my beef bone broth. So it has been a busy day in the kitchen, and I am going to show you how we make our chicken pot pie. Now, this recipe is something I've used for a couple of years. Looks like I printed this back in 2021, so I've been using this recipe for a little over 4 years, and it came from Natasha's Kitchen. This recipe is fantastic, makes a great pot pie. You can use homemade pie crust if you want, or you can use store-bought. So I'm using store-bought pie crust today because that's what I have the time and energy for, and that's my pressure cooker telling me that my beef bone broth is ready. So anyway, I've got a lot going on, so I'm not going to make homemade pie crust today. I'm going to go with some store-bought, and I will show you how I make my pot pie. Now, we're going to cook one and have that for dinner tonight. I'm also going to make one for my parents, and then I'm going to make one for the freezer. So I'll get at least 3 pot pies out of my efforts today, and so let's get going. So I brought you over to the stove so you can see how we make our chicken pot pie filling. Now I am going to get 2 pans going, and you'll be able to see one of them here. And I've got another one going over here, so you'll kind of see that one as well. I am cooking up a whole bunch of pot pie filling in 2 different pans, and then I will separate it into 3, possibly 4 pot pies once I'm done making everything. So now pot pie starts with some butter. We are going to end up making a roux when we make this pot pie, so butter will go in both pans. The recipe calls for about 6 tablespoons of butter. So there is about 6 tablespoons of butter in one pan, and I've got 6 tablespoons also in the other. So we will let this butter melt, and then we are going to add some vegetables to it. Now, this recipe calls for carrots, onion, mushrooms, garlic, and then you also put frozen peas in it. If you do not like frozen peas, you could eliminate them. If you would like to make things a little bit easier and just use like a bag of mixed vegetables, you could do that as well. I have pretty much always followed this recipe as it's written. Sometimes I omit the mushrooms, like tonight I will be omitting the mushrooms because I forgot to buy them. But you could use canned mushrooms if you have them. The mushrooms are great in this recipe, but not necessary. This particular pot pie does not include potatoes. I have had pot pie before that had potatoes in it. If you wanted to add some, I'm sure that you could. The instructions just say to melt butter in a skillet, and then we're going to add onions and carrots and saute for about 8 minutes over medium heat. So we are going to continue to allow our butter to melt, and then I will show you our sauteing vegetables. So we have melty, sizzly butter. We've got about 1.5 onions here. Because I'm going to make 3 pot pies out of this, I wanted to make sure I had enough vegetables. So I had probably 6 or 7 small carrots, so I used all of those, chopped them up in my Mueller chopper, and 1.5 onions. And so I am just going to put half in this pan, and then the other half in my other pan. I've got about 6 or 7 cloves of chopped garlic, and so I'm going to put half in this pan because the recipe calls for like 3 cloves of garlic, and half in this pan. And I think I've said before in other videos that if you're going to make something, like I believe I mentioned this in my lasagna video, if you're going to make pasta sauce and lasagna, it really doesn't take too much more effort to make a double batch than it does to make a single batch. So in my one lasagna video, on the channel, I made 2 lasagnas and we made a bunch of sauce. And like I said, that one lasagna in that video went to one of our sons, and then the other lasagna we ate and enjoyed. And really, because I was standing there and doing all the work for one lasagna, it wasn't too terribly difficult to just make 2. So I'm making multiple pot pies tonight because I have the ingredients for it. I don't want them to go to waste. And also the time and effort that I put in tonight will save us lots of time and energy because we'll have 2 whole pot pies for ourselves, and then we also will have 1 to share with my parents. Now, while our onions and carrots are simmering with the garlic and the butter, I'm going to take this opportunity to season everything. You want to build up layers of seasoning flavors when you make your food. I'll check for seasoning later on to see if I need to add more, but it's always good to season as you cook, and then, like I said, taste later and adjust as necessary. Our recipe says that these need to saute for about 8 minutes, and I guess we'll see how long it takes. But you basically want them to be softened. When this pie is assembled, the ingredients inside of it will be fully cooked, and it will go into the oven at 425, and it will bake for about 30 to 35 minutes until the top crust is golden brown. So because all of the ingredients in here will be fully cooked and it's not going to bake for a very long time in the oven, I made sure that my carrots and onions were chopped to the same size so that they cook evenly. And I will make sure that these carrots are really on their way to cooking before I put it in the oven, because you don't want crunchy carrots in your pot pie. Now, I have a tremendous amount of cooked up chicken. When I made chicken stock, I made enough to fill, I believe it was 6 quarts of chicken stock, and so that I used 2 whole chickens to do that. So the meat off of 2 whole chickens made 12 cups of chicken, and this recipe for 1 pot pie calls for 4 cups of chicken. So I am using the 12 cups between the 2 pans to make 3 pot pies, and I figure they'll be nice and full of filling, and they'll be really hearty and delicious. And I do make them in sort of a deeper dish pie plate, and I will show you how to do that. Now, I am not an expert when it comes to crimping pie crust and making it look gorgeous, so I'm going to warn you of that ahead of time, but I promise your pie will be delicious. I know how to assemble and crimp a pie crust, but despite all of my knowledge, it never comes out as good as I would like it to, so that is okay. It will still taste great, and thankfully my family doesn't really care what it looks like. So we are just going to continue to saute these vegetables, and I'll show you what they look like when we go to the next step. Our onions, carrots, and garlic have cooked down, and they are certainly now soft and on their way. The recipe calls for a 1/3 cup of flour to be added to each. Now, because I am actually making 3 pot pies and not just 2, I realized I needed to add a little bit more butter. So originally I added 6 tablespoons to each pan. I added a little bit more, so I've got closer to 8 tablespoons now. I want there to be enough sauce and gravy in this for all 3 pies, and I don't want it to be too dry because there's a lot of chicken going in here. So I did add a little extra butter, and now I need about 1/3 of a cup, but what I'm going to do is use just sort of like a heaping 1/3 of a cup in each pan to make my gravy here, and that should do the trick. Now, the nice thing about cooking is that you can kind of, do things like that. You can tweak the recipe a little bit. You don't have to be exactly perfect. When you bake, you absolutely don't want to mess around with ratios of things, but when you cook, you've got a little bit more freedom. So I just, like I said, added a little more fat and a little more flour so that I can make sure that this gravy that we're making to go in these pot pies, that there's going to be enough of it. So now this one is on its way. And we're going to cook that raw flour taste out, and I'm going to now stir my second pan's worth. And we just want to make sure that we combine our fat, which is the butter, with our flour and saute it over medium-low heat and get that raw flour taste out. Now when we add our liquids to this in a moment, it's going to thicken really nicely and just make just the most lovely saucy gravy to go in this pot pie. And then I'm going to let the filling cool just a little bit before I put it in my pie plates with my pie crust, because I don't want it to like melt the pie crust. So again, we are going to just kind of stir this around, make sure it doesn't burn. It's starting to smell nutty and delicious. And this is basically a roux that we are making so that our pie will have a nice sauce in it that's thick. Our vegetables now are nicely cooked in with our roux, which is butter and flour. Smells amazing, and we're going to add our liquid. So now we need to add 2 cups of chicken stock and a half a cup of heavy cream to each one. So I will be adding 3 cups of chicken stock to each one, because again, I'm making 3 pot pies and not just 2. So this is my homemade chicken stock, and because I'm making 3 pot pies and not just 2, I'm going to add 3 cups of chicken stock instead of 2 to each pan. And I am going to stir this. I just got these new whisks and I love them. They are fantastic and they do not scratch your pan. So it's a heat resistant whisk, but it is made to use in a hot pan and will not scratch it if it's ceramic or coated or anything like that. So I'm very excited about these whisks. And I'm going to bring this to a simmer and it will start to thicken, and I will add my heavy cream in a moment. And I will show you what it looks like when it comes to a simmer and when I add the cream. So both of our pans of our chicken gravy have now come to a fabulous simmer, and I have now 1.5 cups of heavy cream, and so I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup to each pan because like I said, making 3 pot pies, so that was the appropriate calculation. So 3/4 of a cup here and 3/4 of a cup here. And then we will mix this in. And then next we're going to fold in our chicken and our peas. So this I've turned down to low. And I will bring it back up a little bit because this cold cream needs to combine with our gravy here and come back to a simmer before I add the rest of the ingredients. And then I will, once I add in my chicken and some parsley and some peas, then I will check for seasoning, because once it goes in the oven, once it's all wrapped up in crust and goes in the oven, it's kind of too late to try to season it. So I do want to make sure that it is perfect before it goes in the oven. And I will be folding in a lot of chicken here, and the chicken that I'm adding here was pressure cooked. So, and my homemade chicken stock, I don't add any salt to. So when I cook with it, sometimes, you know, you have to season it. Now, if you're trying to watch your sodium, or you can't have a lot of sodium, then making your own home canned chicken stock and beef stock is a great option, because you can control the ingredients and you can also control the amount of sodium in them. So we are coming to a simmer, which is great. And I think I'm going to grab a spoon now and give this a taste. Oh, that is great. I do definitely need more pepper. And honestly, the amount of pepper that you add to this is to your taste. I've probably added maybe half a tablespoon altogether, but again, you can control that seasoning. I'm going to add some dried parsley as well. Now, if you have fresh parsley, you could absolutely add that, but I'm just going to add a little bit of dried. And in a moment, I will fold in the chicken and I will show you what that looks like. Our parsley, salt, and pepper are stirred in, so now I'm going to add our chicken. Now, I measured out 4 cups of chicken into 3 separate bowls, so this is 4 cups, and then I'm putting 4 cups in the other pan, and then I have another 4 cups here, so I'm going to put half in here and half in here, and that should get us to our 3 pot pies. So our chicken is in. I'm going to stir to combine, and all of this delicious sauce is going to combine with our chicken. Now, when I made my homemade chicken broth, there were some carrots in there, and I chopped those up and I put them in with my frozen chicken. So some of this chicken does have some like already cooked carrot mixed in with it, and that's fine. It's just extra vegetables that goes in the pot pie, and it will be absolutely delicious. And this is what you want to see. You want to see that you have enough sauce, because I'm using so much chicken, and these are really going to be very comforting and very hearty and very filling. You want to make sure you've got enough of this sauce, because the last thing you want is just a big bite of dry chicken in your pot pie. So that is good for that pot pie. I'm going to mix up my second one, and then I'm going to add peas. Now, if your family does not like peas, you don't have to add them in. You could add in maybe some green beans instead if you want. I feel like you could probably just chop up some leftover veggies that you might have in the fridge, like some, broccoli or whatever, and throw that in here. I don't think it would make anybody too upset, but you definitely want some additional vegetables in here. And so the original recipe calls for a cup of peas in each pan, so I'll do a cup and a half, because again, I am making 3 pot pies. So this is just stirred in, and I will probably give this another taste just to make sure that it is seasoned properly. I'll just grab a fresh spoon. So a fresh spoon, and now, oh, that's perfect. That's really good. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is stir in my peas. So it'll be 1 and about a half cup of peas in each one. And these are just like frozen steamable peas. You can use those. You don't want to use canned. The recipe says do not thaw them when you go to put them in. Leave them frozen when you stir them in. So that is what I did. But this filling is awesome. And like I said, we're just going to mix in our peas, and then I will show you how to put this in your pie plates and get it in the oven. Our filling is ready to go, and so now we're going to take these 2 pans of our chicken pot pie filling and get it in our pie plates. Now, these are our pie plates already with our bottom crust in them, and they're just store-bought crusts, like I said. Now, this is a glass pie plate. I don't like putting a glass pie plate in the freezer, so this one will definitely get baked tonight. This one will definitely get baked tonight. One will go to my parents when it's already cooked, and one will be for us. This one is going into the freezer, and so I've put parchment paper in so that I can put it in the freezer in the pan, and then when it is completely frozen solid, I can lift it out and put it into like a freezer bag or wrap it really well with saran or foil or some combination of that. And then that way when I go to cook it, I can just put it right back in this pan, and it'll be the right shape and size, and it will bake. But I'm not going to end up having to keep this pan in the freezer for months, depending on how long it takes us to want to eat pot pie again. So we're just going to divide this up. So I will get this one out of the way. And so I'm going to put about 2/3 of this pan's worth of filling into this pot pie. Now, like I said, these pot pies are very generously filled, and so you definitely want a deep dish pan or deep dish pie plate. And when I fold them, like I said, I'm no expert when it comes to folding pie crust, but I fold it in such a way that we maximize how much filling is in here, and it stays together, but it's not by any means going to be the most gorgeous pot pie you've ever seen in your life. But I will get it to go together and not explode in the oven, so that'll be a win. But this is a lot of filling. Now, if you end up with extra filling, you can absolutely take your extra filling and just put it over like some rice or something. Or some pasta. This is very much like, I guess, almost like a chicken a la king kind of situation, but it makes phenomenal pot pie. So I think I'm going to stop there with this one. And then if I have a little extra left, I could always throw more in there. And then this is going to go in this one, along with some from the other pan. So like I said, we'll see how it goes, because these pot pies end up very full, and they're very hearty and very filling. And if you mound up the filling sort of in the center and kind of get it away from the edges a little bit, that'll help you sort of adhere your edges when you go to crimp them together. But this one is still going to, believe it or not, get more filling. And so, all right, so probably about this much more filling needs to go in here. And I know it looks insane. There's so much filling in this, but I've made this recipe multiple times, and these pot pies are absolutely fabulous. Now it looks like I got a little on there. That is okay. So now I'm going to move this out of the way, and I will get my third pie plate over here. And like I said, I'm just going to do my best to divide these between the 3 pies. Now, if you wanted to make a 4th pie and maybe, use less filling in your pot pie, you absolutely can. But, they're fabulous. And like I said, if you're feeding a crowd of people, these pot pies are so full and so meaty that you'll be able to feed plenty of people with all of this pot pie. So I'm going to continue to fill this, top off the other 2 with more filling if I need to, and then when they are put together and sealed, I will show you what that looks like. So I've got all of my filling here in my pies, and what I'm doing now is just getting my top crust on. Now, somehow, miraculously, the temperature of this pie crust is perfect because it's like flexible, but it's not breaking on me. It's not too warm. And I think because I let my filling cool a little bit, that's probably being very kind to me. Now, so I basically set it on the top and put the edges of my pie crust on top of each other so that they'll hang out together. And then I basically kind of fold the top crust over the bottom on the sides here. And I just sort of turn my pie plate as I do that and sort of push it down. And then once I have done that all the way around, I will crimp the edges. Now, the crimping part, it may not be perfect, but it'll be fine. It'll be good enough. But the big thing is to sort of fold that top crust over like this so that it seals and then you don't end up with a pie crust blowout in your oven. I will cut some slits in the top of this pot pie, but you see it's very, very full, and I mounted it in the center, but that is fine. I can push it down a tiny bit. This is going to be perfect. So then I just take my 2 fingers like this and my other finger like this and go all the way around and crimp my edges. And so, I mean, I don't know if Martha Stewart would approve, but it looks pretty okay. And it does the trick. And like I said, this pot pie is really delicious, very comforting. It's kind of like rainy and cold. We've had a little bit of snow outside. Now the snow is sort of melted. Now it's raining, and this is just sort of a great late fall, almost winter sort of dinner. And so there we go. We got our first pie ready to go, and it looks pretty good, I think. And I'm going to just take a paring knife, and I'm going to make, I don't know, like 4 little slits to vent in the center there, and then put that to the side. And I'm going to do that with these other 2 pies, and then I will show you what they all look like when they're done. All of our pot pies are assembled. These 2 are going to go in the oven, and so, well, I think they're going to need their own tray each, but that's fine. So I'll put it on a tray just in case it really wants to bubble. This one is probably going to be okay because it's a deep dish, so I may not even put that on a tray, but this one, I don't know if I trust it. And then, like I said, this one I'm going to put in the freezer as is. I'm going to flash freeze it, and then when it's frozen, I'll lift this out, put it in a bag or wrap it, and then we'll have it next time we want a pot pie, but I won't tie up my pie plate in the freezer for months at a time. So these are gonna go in the oven, 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. Now the recipe says to cook at 425, but my top oven tends to run really hot. So instead of 425, I'm gonna do 400, and we'll check them after 25 or 30 minutes, and we'll see how they're doing, and I will show you what they look like when they're done. Our pot pie is out of the oven now. Because I cooked it at 400 degrees and not 425, it took about 45 minutes to cook, but that is just fine. Like I said, my top oven tends to run a little bit hot, and I didn't want to put it at 425 and then risk burning it. So our pot pies are all set. This one is going to go to my parents, and this one is for us tonight. So I will cut this and show you how it came out. Now, like I said, they're generously filled, but it is absolutely delicious. And so that is our piece of pot pie. Now, if I would have let this cool a little bit longer, I'm sure it wouldn't have like spread on the plate as much as it did. However, it's nice and hot, and we're going to eat it, so I didn't want to let it cool any longer. Leftovers of this are absolutely delicious. What you can do is slice it into your individual servings and then just put them in containers in the fridge, and then when you're ready to eat it, just microwave it and you are good to go. But I'm going to give this a taste, and then we are going to enjoy our dinner. I do still have beef bone broth going. I've got a batch going in the Instant Pot pressure cooker and a final batch ready to go. I've got one batch that came out and is cooling from the pressure canner, and another one going. So I'll continue to work that tonight after we have our dinner, and I will show you what our finished beef bone broth looks like in the jars when it's done. But I'm going to take a bite of this. This is absolutely delicious. It's so creamy. The chicken is not dry. There's plenty of sauce on the chicken, as you can see. The veggies are nice and tender, but not overcooked. And the pie crust is flaky and delicious. So I want to thank you for joining us in the Pickup Kitchen. It means so much to me that you are here and you're enjoying our videos. So thank you for being here. If you have not already, please like and subscribe. It helps us very much to grow our channel if you remember to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Good night. So here are 6 beef bone broths that are canned. And so these 3 that just came out of the pressure canner are like bubbling. It's the craziest thing. Like when they come out of the pressure canner, they almost look like lava lamps, which is really cool. The 3 behind it have cooled. They've been out a little longer. And I have 3 more going in the pressure canner plus another thing of broth. So when we are done with our beef bone broth tonight, we'll have 9 cans altogether. And so again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.